Twisted Metal begins 20 years in the future after an apocalypse threw the world into chaos. Now cities have walled themselves in from the outside world to protect themselves. Everything outside the city is on its own and at risk to being attacked. Individuals termed milkmen are needed to transport goods between cities. John Doe is one of these milkmen. His name is John Doe because as a child he woke up after a car crash that resulted in amnesia. He can't remember anything about his past and doesn't even remember his own name. John's car, which he named Evelyn, is the closest thing he has to a friend in this post-apocalyptic world. Early in the first season, we see John being chased by vultures who are trying to steal the package that he's transporting. John's car is heavily armored with multiple enhancements, including gadgets and guns. One of the vultures who tries to break into John's car is named Quiet because she doesn't speak. John chases her and her brother named Loud off. John then shows up at New San Francisco with an order of insulin, and the city seems well organized and well equipped, more so than the other outposts we see earlier in the series. Once at the gates, John is informed that Raven, the COO of New San Francisco, wants to speak with John. After being decontaminated, he meets with Raven and her husband, Noah, at an apartment after showing him the city. Raven wants to meet John because she wants him to do a risky job for her. She wants him to go to New Chicago, which is further east than John has ever been and sounds very dangerous. The job also has a time limit on it. If John completes it after the time limit has passed, the deal is off. Raven has selected John to do this job for her because he's returned over a dozen times to New San Francisco, while other milkmen have arrived once or maybe twice and are presumably killed for their cargo, which makes John very good at his job. Raven doesn't offer John money or goods to make this delivery. She offers him the thing he's always wanted. The job offers John the ability to be a member of the city with an apartment of his own. John is sold and he agrees to take the project. After John leaves, we see that Raven isn't really married and that wasn't her baby. She's playing John. At this point, we don't know what her endgame is, but she clearly isn't telling the truth. Cut to Nevada, and we see Quiet and her brother Loud running from Agent Stone, who hits the hearse they are driving with a remote mine. When he shows up at the scene of their crash, he offers them a choice. If one of them takes themselves out, he will let the other go free. Loud decides to sacrifice himself for Quiet. Before branding Quiet, he notices that she's not very talkative because she's from Orange County and she's missing a finger. Meanwhile, John meets his friend named Tommy at a diner. Tommy is a cartographer with a huge collection of maps and a deep knowledge of the hazards and waste stations throughout the country. Tommy tells John that the vultures aren't the garden variety he's used to dealing with out in New Chicago, which is 2,100 miles away. There is no protection out there and the mission seems impossible, but John still wants to push ahead. In order to get to New Chicago, John is forced to drive through Vegas, which it looks like a wasteland. He almost hits Quiet while she's walking on the road, and he swerves to miss her. They end up in a standoff, and John realizes that she is somebody who he ran into earlier, and she's wearing the jacket of her brother. While the standoff is happening, Sweet Tooth, the de facto boss of Las Vegas, is driving up on them fast in his ice cream truck. His truck is outfitted with a bunch of guns and is surprisingly fast. Sweet Tooth eventually runs them off the road into the lobby of a casino. He captures John and Quiet and makes them watch his one-man show. The show is terrible, and Sweet Tooth is clearly psychotic as he talks to a paper bag, which he named Harold. When he asks John and Quiet what they think of the show, John begins to tell him he loved it. This seems to enrage Sweet Tooth, who explains to John that if he doesn't tell him the truth, he's going to make him shut up and bleed. Quiet saves John by speaking up for the first time. She tells Sweet Tooth that it was a snooze fest and it sucked. Sweet Tooth asks John if he agrees with her. They convince Sweet Tooth that he needs to get out into the world and stop doing the show in Vegas. Sweet Tooth takes their advice and he burns down the hotel, tells them that he's taking the show on the road. Apparently, John and Quiet are the only people to ever survive Sweet Tooth's show because they were honest with him. Because of this, he lets them go, and they stock up their car, and they start out again for New Chicago. At this point, we are introduced to Stu and Mike, who are being held by a group of butchers. Agent Stone's men take out the butchers, and when he learns that Mike and Stu work security, he offers them a spot on his team, after they complete one challenge. Stone wants them to protect a truck from some seagulls. Stone hands Mike and Stu each a rifle, and when some individuals approach the truck, he says they need to take them out. These people are unarmed and they're just trying to survive. We learn this is just a loyalty test. Stone wants to see if these guys will take out unarmed individuals who have done nothing wrong. Stu is unable to do so, and Mike does it for him. We learn in some flashbacks that Stone ruthlessly pursues the law now, because he was repeatedly disrespected as a younger member of the Topeka PD pre-apocalypse. Stone's goal is to provide law and order across the nation. He's built outposts from southern Arizona to the Canadian wastes in order to do so. When John and Quiet arrive at one of these checkpoints at the Hoover Dam, Quiet attempts to shoot Shepard after recognizing him as one of the officers that pulled over her brother earlier. Both John and Quiet are then tased and taken into custody. When searching their belongings, Shepard finds the map that John had on him, and he realizes this is a big problem. This map allows John to avoid all of the checkpoints and roadblocks they have set up. If this map were to get out to the population, it would make Stone's efforts worthless. Inside the dam is a DMV where John and Quiet are tortured by being forced to do things like fill out endless paperwork and listen to Barbie Girl. Stu really isn't cut out for this kind of work, and when it comes time to dispose of John and Quiet at the end of the red line, he decides to help them escape instead of following through. Problem is, Stu ends up being knocked out by the trunk after the car requires a push start. Stu is subsequently arrested and put through the same treatment. After getting back on the road, John and Quiet run into a trucker convoy led by Miranda Watts, who forces them into the back of one of the trucks. We learn that Granny wants a milkman who isn't one of theirs to pick up pharmaceuticals from a previous member of their group named Amber Rose. After John and Quiet successfully acquire the meds, we learn that Granny wants them to help her pass away easily, because she has a terminal condition. In return for completing the job, John receives some upgrades to his vehicle, including a rocket which they attach to the roof of his car. At this point, John and Quiet are on the outskirts of Topeka, Kansas. Quiet wanted John to take her there. She lied and told him that it was a safe community, but really, it's Agent Stone's headquarters and she wants revenge for her brother. She then drugs John and leaves him on the side of the road because she doesn't want to put him in harm's way. At the same time, Sweet Tooth shows up at the Hoover Dam checkpoint and he starts taking out all the cops because he hates cops. Sweet Tooth saves Stu, and he takes a liking to him and the rest of the people he saved because they applauded him. Now Sweet Tooth has the following he's always wanted. When John wakes up, he reads Quiet's letter and he decides to go to New Chicago without her. Back in Topeka, Quiet and Agent Stone end up having the first one-on-one car fight in the series, with Stone coming out on top. He uses a rocket to flip Quiet's vehicle. It looks like he's going to finish her off, but just then John comes to the rescue with the rocket he got from the trucker convoy. Flashback to the OC farmlands with Quiet and her brother. Quiet at this point is boisterous and she's very talkative, but she's looking for a better life. They've lived in the OC farmlands their entire lives, but she wants them to travel to the Orange County Beachlands, which is offering free housing. When we see Quiet and Loud in the Beachlands, it looks like they are being treated really poorly. There is a ruling class and a worker class in the OC Beachlands. Quiet is some kind of assistant to someone in the ruling class. All of the ruling class individuals seem to use cruelty to keep people in line, cutting off ears, fingers, and other extremities to enforce their rule, and anyone who gets seriously out of line is dealt with by a reaper. Quiet one day runs into her brother, who is working at a fast food restaurant. The manager catches Loud with his sister in the back room, and he's not happy about it. So he ends up calling the reapers to take Loud away, after cutting off his ear for his collection. Quiet ends up saving him by taking out the reapers and the manager. This is how they end up in the hearse, when Agent Stone runs into them later. Back to present day, and John and Quiet are fighting at a restaurant because Quiet isn't happy John saved her and took away her chance to take out Stone. After yelling at each other, things get spicy when they kiss and end up hooking up in a kid's ball pit. They later get trapped in the restaurant by a Watkins storm, which is an extreme weather event that started 20 years ago, and it sends out an EMP pulse disabling or killing anything it hits. While trapped in the restaurant, they go back and forth between liking each other and yelling at each other, but eventually Quiet agrees to go with John to New Chicago. Flashback to 1989, and we see the origin of Sweet Tooth. He's starring in a television show, and we see the paper bag. We see him try to tell a joke to the studio audience, who doesn't laugh. They do, however, laugh at his co-star named Billy, who's a dog. This makes Sweet Tooth very angry, and he attacks the dog, which prompts his parents to send him to a juvenile facility. This later turns into a stint at Blackfield Asylum. Back to present day, and John and Quiet are outside New Chicago, but they have no idea how to make contact because there's a moat and a wall around the city. Quiet decides to throw a rock randomly at the wall, which prompts the door of a shed to open. The door leads to an underground passageway where a person with a creepy voice guides them to a secret door which has the package in it. After getting the package, John and Quiet go to a depot for milkman, which has one principal rule: you don't tell anyone what you're transporting. They run into Mary there, who's a milkman that John used to date. Mary holds a grudge against John from their time together previously, and John, after drinking too much, reveals to Mary that this will be his last run because of the importance of what he's transporting. Mary tells the other milkmen in the establishment about John's transport, and they all start attacking him. Quiet and John end up fighting their way out of the pit stop and getting back on the road to New San Francisco. However, Pit Viper texts Agent Stone that John and Quiet are on their way. Sweet Tooth, meanwhile, decides to go back to Blackfield Asylum, where he used to reside with his growing following after destroying another one of Agent Stone's outposts. He talks with Stu, and he shows Stu around the place. He also shows Stu the skeletons of his parents, who after the apocalypse occurred, he caught and placed in the asylum to rot. After exiting the asylum into the courtyard, we see that Agent Stone and his men ambush Sweet Tooth's following, and they shoot at him and Stu. Sweet Tooth ends up getting the drop on Stone's men when they go out to finish him off. He's about to take Mike out when Stu convinces him not to. Flashback to John waking up inside a car. He looks about 10 years old. It looks like he was driving the car and crashed it. A woman finds him and looks like she's going to help him, but instead steals his car, leaving John only with a burnt picture of his family. Back to current day, and we see Quiet looking at the same photo. John tells her to be careful, but she isn't, and it blows out the window, forcing them to go look for it. While they're looking for the photo, holy men steal John's car, Evelyn. And we learn that John's car is so important to him because it's literally saved his life back in the day. When John and Quiet track the holy men down at their party, we see the leader Coke Jesus receive Evelyn as a gift. John can't leave the car, and he chooses the car over Quiet because she just wants to leave safely. While attempting to steal back the car, John ends up fighting with the preacher. An explosion occurs after some gasoline is spilled. John survives the explosion, but his car Evelyn does not. We are now 48 hours away from the deadline, and Quiet is trying to bring the package back to New San Francisco without John, as he stayed behind for the car. A vulture ends up getting the drop on Quiet and is about to take her out when the convoy comes to the rescue. John informed them where she would be. Quiet doesn't seem happy about the situation, as John chose the car over her earlier. They eventually do patch things up after John apologizes, though. The convoy also helps them build a new car, which they call Roadkill, and Miranda informs them that they can't go through the dam area, but she has a way to get around Stone's blockades. However, Stone is waiting to ambush them when they get there. Just then, Sweet Tooth shows up and everyone is ready for a car fight. We have Miranda in her F1 car, John and Quiet in Roadkill, Sweet Tooth in his ice cream truck, and Agent Stone in his armored SUV. Sweet Tooth lights his hair on fire for good measure. John, Quiet, the convoy, and Sweet Tooth join forces against Stone's men. They all appear to be on the same team until Sweet Tooth blows up one of the convoy trucks with a missile. Stu asks him why he did that because they were on the same side. Sweet Tooth said there are no sides and everybody burns. Mike then tries to take Sweet Tooth out, but Sweet Tooth gets a drop on him. Sweet Tooth then holds Mike down, and he wants Stu to take him out. But instead, Stu shoots Sweet Tooth in the left eye. After exiting his ice cream truck, Sweet Tooth is then hit by a car, and we're not sure if he's alive or dead at this point. John and Quiet have a final showdown with Agent Stone. They end up flipping his car. After the crash, it seems that Agent Stone has the upper hand on Quiet. John saves Quiet by hitting Agent Stone in the face with a hatchet. Quiet then gives Agent Stone a similar choice that he gave her brother. She hands him a weapon and she says he can end it quick or slowly. John and Quiet end up showing up at New San Francisco and deliver the package. They allow John to live in the city, but the deal doesn't include Quiet. John doesn't want to leave Quiet at the gates, but she shoots him because she knows they'll pull him into the city for medical attention. The guards then want Quiet to take over John's route, but instead of delivering the package, she throws it into the crowd. Raven wants John to get used to the life inside before telling him what she really wants from him. The delivery was just a test. It was ice cream being transported from New Chicago. We eventually find out what Raven wants. She wants John to represent her in a survival car race tournament that Apocalypso is organizing, and she tells him she needs him to win. In the last scene, we see Quiet running over some road spikes. When she looks up, there are women in masks surrounding her. One of them says, "I heard you know my brother. His name is John." If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.